Did you know that Michael Jackson almost played a character? Or that NSYNC was almost in Star Wars? Or that a young Han Solo almost was in Revenge of the Sith? This is 99 things that you probably didn't know about the Star Wars Prequel Trilogy. I hope you enjoy. The Phantom Menace. Some of Doug Chiang's earliest concepts were inspired by the sights of Marin County, California. Having relocated to the area outside San Francisco to work on The Phantom Menace, Chiang found early ideas in local landmarks like the Marin Civic Center, which inspired elements of architecture in Theed, or the verdant hills of Nicasio near Skywalker Ranch, which became the setting for the battle between the droids and the Gungans. Natalie Portman's royal voice was modified in post-production. When Padme is acting as Queen Amidala, she speaks in a low and solemn tone.
You will not be so pleased when you hear what I have to say, Viceroy. Your trade boycott of our planet has ended.
Which was inspired by the transatlantic accents of Lauren Bacall and Katharine Hepburn. Set decorator Peter Walpole and his team used medical equipment to bring the locations of Episode 1 to life. The team at Leviston Prop Department, determined to keep costs down, picked through a medical supplier warehouse crammed with old equipment and haggled down the price of every piece. The pieces were then combined in creative ways to craft the items decorating the Skywalker home. The waterfalls of Naboo were created with salt. Real-life footage of salt flowing off an edge was used for the film, imported into a computer and then used to digitally create the texture of rushing water. Nick Gillard found inspiration for the sword-fighting style of the Jedi in some surprising places. The stunt coordinator described the fighting style seen in the iconic duel at the end of the movie as a mixture of kendo and samurai in every sword style that's ever been, and a bit of tennis and a bit of tree chopping. Everything that you could swing at. George Lucas wrote the script to Episode 1 by hand with just a pencil and notebook paper, which is very common for him as he usually writes all his scripts in this manner. One of the biggest influences on the making of The Phantom Menace was the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Not only did a significant number of the television series crew and production team later work on The Phantom Menace, some of the techniques they perfected while filming the series were used on the movie as well. Rick McCallum, producer of the prequel trilogy, called the show a testing bed to learn a new way of making films. Jar Jar Binks was originally designed with green skin. The design team later realized that most aquatic creatures on our own planet don't sport green hues, so they changed this skin tone to orange instead. Yaddle is actually an early young Yoda design. Concept artist Ian McCaig began designing the Jedi Master's younger look as an 8-year-old version of the character. That concept eventually became another Jedi in the film, Yaddle. The moving mechanism inside 3PO's head is a missile gyroscope. Chief model maker Lauren Peterson had found it and let the effects team borrow it. The design of the multi-troop transport, MTT, in The Phantom Menace was inspired by elephants. In the featurette Conversations, Doug Chiang Looks Back, the concept artist talked about using familiar shapes to help the audience understand a design on a basic level. If you look at the front of the MTT, the tiny little slits represent the elephant's eyes and his forehead, and the trunk I turned into the door, and the tusks actually became the two guns on the sides. Costume colors are specific to the planets of the galaxy far, far away. Ian McCaig and costume designer Tricia Bigger worked together to create the palettes: gray, brown, and black for Coruscant, green and gold for Naboo, and sun-bleached sandy colors for Tatooine. They filmed in a real palace. Then there was the Naboo Palace. For that, they went to the Caserta Palace in Caserta, Italy, and took it over for 4 days. Samuel L. Jackson got the role of Mace Windu in part through an appearance on a British talk show, TFI Friday, to promote a different movie. The casting director for The Phantom Menace, Robin Gurland, heard that Jackson made his wish to be in the new Star Wars known while chatting on the talk show. Ahmed Best was discovered through his performance in the theater show Stomp. Gurland happened to catch the show and spotted Best in the cast. His energy and performance made her realize he's Jar Jar. Greg Proops and Scott Capurro recorded their pod racing commentary and prosthetics and makeup. The footage would later be used as reference for their digital characters, Fode and Bede. 17. Plo Koon was named after the son of creature effects supervisor Nick Dudman. I decided to call one of the Jedi Plon Koon because we called my son that during his first year of life, Dudman said. I wrote down Plon Koon and George tossed out the N and Plo Koon was born. The 3 Wookiees in the Galactic Senate all wore the same Chewbacca costume from the Lucasfilm archive. The actor in the old suit was filmed 3 different times with slight adjustments made to the hair. When the shots were put together, we ended up with 3 different Wookiees out of 1 suit, said Dudman. The very first scene of The Phantom Menace filmed featured the Sith. Their balcony chat on Coruscant marked the beginning of production in 1997. The Tunisian army helped rebuild a set. Thanks to the fact that one set was luckily left in one piece, the landing ramp of the Naboo Royal Starship, plus the efforts of the entire crew and local helpers, production continued without delay. The Jedi and Sith went through 300 aluminum lightsaber blades while filming. Nick Gillard helped build the new lightsabers for the physically and mentally intensive duels. Why does Watto only have 1 tusk? The Toydarian was originally designed with 2 large tusks on either side of his trunk-like nose, but they would have prevented his lips from fully shaping words with an M or a B. 1 tusk was broken off and his lopsided smile was born. More Watto facts. Through his design and motions, the team quickly learned how to achieve what they wanted on featured digital characters. Even just the cord on his tool belt had to have its own computer program written to simulate its movement properly. The crowd of the Boonta Eve Classic pod race. Sometimes practical effects work best to achieve just the right 3-dimensional look for faraway shots, and a model maker had the creative idea to use cotton swabs in the arena models. Cheering. Sound designer Ben Burt recorded crowd reactions at a San Francisco 49ers game to get an authenticity of a crowd. Lucas thought he was done with Star Wars for good. Lucas was done with Star Wars, but he had a lot of backstory left from writing the first Star Wars script, and so he began to think about prequels. Once he felt CGI was good enough to help him tell the story, he decided to get back in to Star Wars. Lucas started working on the film long before it came out. The Phantom Menace would hit theaters in 1999. The first news story about Lucas working on Star Wars prequels came out in 1993. This was when he began outlining his story, and he would start writing the script in 1994. The director went back to his original ideas. Fortunately for Lucas, he held on to the 15-page outline he had written for Star Wars all the way back in 1976. This outline included information on character backstories and events that had happened before the original trilogy. He used some of the details from this outline, but one key difference is that he lowered Anakin's age from 12 to 9. The Phantom Menace is an intriguing, if opaque, title. For most of the production, though, the movie had a much simpler title. Simply, The Beginning. Lucas originally didn't want to direct. It had been well over a decade since Lucas helmed a Star Wars project. Once he started writing the film, he asked Steven Spielberg, Ron Howard, and Robert Zemeckis to direct. They all told him the same thing, which is he should do it himself. Playing Obi-Wan meant embodying the original. 50 actors were considered for the role of young Obi-Wan Kenobi. One of the primary things they were looking for was an actor who looked like a young Alec Guinness. Ewan McGregor got the role, and then he worked with a vocal coach to sound more like Guinness. One actor was surprised to return. Ian McDiarmid took over the role of the Emperor in Return of the Jedi, and he was back in The Phantom Menace as Senator Palpatine, the man who would become the Emperor. McDiarmid admitted to being surprised that he was brought back, given that 16 years had passed since Return of the Jedi, but he was now playing a younger version of the same character. Someone famous really wanted to play Jar Jar Binks. That person was Michael Jackson. He had approached Lucas about it, but he also wanted to play Jar Jar in prosthetics. Lucas had decided the character would be CGI, so he said no. If you're enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and answering the question, which fact is your favorite? Attack of the Clones. Lucas brought in a new writer. The Phantom Menace had not been received very well, and that made Lucas slow to return to writing. However, He had a second film in this trilogy to make, so he didn't even finish a rough draft of the script until 3 months before shooting began. After doing a couple drafts, Lucas brought in Jonathan Hales to help him with the third and final draft, which managed to get Hales a screenplay credit on the movie. The movie had a goofy working title. Attack of the Clones went with the working title Jar Jar's Great Adventure, which was a little bit of a self-deprecating joke based on the unpopularity of Jar Jar Binks. The idea of clones was not new to George Lucas. Lucas did a lot of brainstorming when it came to Star Wars, and old ideas often got reused. For example, he thought about clones when he was writing The Empire Strikes Back. Back then, the idea was Lando would have been a clone from a planet of clones that had been involved in the Clone Wars. A lot of actors tried out for Anakin. Since Attack of the Clones jumps forward 10 years, Jake Lloyd couldn't return as Anakin. A lot of notable actors went up for the part after Lucas's choice of Leonardo DiCaprio fell through, since he was too busy. The actors who tried out for the role were Topher Grace, Colin Hanks, Joshua Jackson, and Paul Walker, among many others. But, in the end, Hayden Christensen got the role. Ahmed Best got to make a cameo. Best returned as Jar Jar in the movie, but he also got to appear in person. His cameo is in the Coruscant Outlander Club, and the character's name is Ahmed Beck. Another future star played one of Amidala's handmaidens. Amidala has a new batch in this movie, with one being Dorme, and she's played by Rose Byrne. A boy band cameo got cut. Supposed to have been given a cameo at the behest of George Lucas's daughter, and apparently they did shoot it, but George decided to cut it. There is a crossover cameo. In 1999, The Matrix released. George Lucas decided to bring Fiona Johnston, who was the woman in the red dress in The Matrix, to make a cameo in the movie. Her character in Star Wars is called Haid Gofi. Samuel L. Jackson got himself a new lightsaber. Prior to this movie, Jedi usually wielded blue or green, but Samuel L. Jackson wanted to stand out, so he asked if he could have a purple lightsaber, and George said yes. Hayden Christensen followed in Ewan McGregor's footsteps. While filming The Phantom Menace, McGregor had a habit of making lightsaber noises, and Christensen did the same thing in Attack of the Clones. One actor got himself written out. Hugh Quarshie, who played Captain Panaka in The Phantom Menace, was supposed to return in Attack of the Clones, but the actor wanted to see the full script, and Lucas, being cautious about information leaking out and spoilers and all that, declined. The actor said no, and that's how Captain Typho was born. One scene was improvised at Lucas's behest. The scene where Anakin and Padme have dinner together was entirely improvised by the actors. Lucas didn't mind. In fact, Lucas asked them to do that, as he had been unhappy with the dialogue he had written for that scene. Lucas said goodbye to puppets. In this movie, Yoda, who had been a puppet prior in the rest of the movies, was a fully CGI character. They consulted with Frank Oz on how to make the character look and move to help feel more authentic and to, bridge the gap. Christopher Lee finally got a chance to be in Star Wars. Sir Christopher Lee had originally been offered the role of Grand Moff Tarkin, but he turned it down. His friend Peter Cushing got the role, as we know, but Lee came to regret this decision, so he didn't let the opportunity pass him by when he was offered the role of Count Dooku. Count Dooku is mentioned in the opening crawl, and he's the main villain of the film, yet he doesn't actually make a physical appearance until 76 minutes into the movie. An apparent goof was not actually a goof. Tamura Morrison, who portrayed Jango Fett, hits his head on the door of the Slave One, and this wasn't a mistake, it was an intentional callback to the goof from A New Hope, where a stormtrooper hits his head on a door. There were hair issues with some of the reshoots. After filming Attack of the Clones, Ewan McGregor went off to shoot Black Hawk Down, but later George Lucas wanted to do some reshoots for Attack of the Clones, but there was an issue, as McGregor had shaved his face and head for Black Hawk Down, so they had to use a fake beard and a wig. A mockumentary was included in the DVD release. The DVD for Attack of the Clones included a trailer for a fake documentary called R2-D2 Beneath the Dome, a fictional humorous look at the life of the beloved droid. The movie was successful, but not by Star Wars standards. Attack of the Clones made, in terms of worldwide, it was a total of $649.3 million, but it was the first Star Wars movie to not finish at the top of the year-end box office. It was behind Spider-Man and Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. It won a couple of awards, and not just negative ones. Attack of the Clones only received one Oscar nomination for Best Visual Effects. That was the fewest for a Star Wars movie at this point. It did win a couple of Razzies for Worst Screenplay and Worst Supporting Actor. There is a THX 1138 Easter egg on a Clone Trooper's helmet. References to THX 1138, George Lucas's film debut, in Attack of the Clones, where you can briefly see 1138 displayed in tiny LED lights on the back of the clone pilot troopers. There were no physical clone trooper costumes used in the film. Not a single one of those clone troopers were played by an actor. It was just CGI. Camino in miniature. Miniature sets were built for the buildings and white interiors of Tipoca City on the rain-soaked world Camino. Attack of the Clones was Roger Ebert's lowest-rated Star Wars movie. Up until 2002, film critic Roger Ebert was firmly on the Star Wars bandwagon. He even gave The Phantom Menace a 3.5 star rating. But for Attack of the Clones, he settled on a 2-star. In the review, he wrote, "I was amazed at the end of Episode 2 to realize that I had not heard one line of quotable, memorable dialogue, and the images, however magnificently conceived, did not have the impact they deserved." The film's Sith villain was almost a woman. Concept artist Ian McCaig, who had created Darth Maul, was initially intent on making Darth Sidious's apprentice a woman for clones. The purpose was to create a foil for Padme, and to explore foreboding forces in a woman known in concept art as Dark Padme, a character with a Medusa-like hairstyle. Trinity College, Dublin, almost took legal action because of the Jedi Archives. What many might not know is that the Jedi Archive room in Attack of the Clones is an exact replica, in terms of the architecture, of the famous long room at Trinity College, Dublin, in their library. Both have the same barrel vault ceiling, double-height bookshelves, and busts lining the aisles, and the similarities were enough that Trinity considered suing Lucasfilm over the issue after the film's release, but they lost interest. Anthony Daniels also got a cameo. In the Outlander Club, Daniels is shown near Ahmed Best, looking when Obi-Wan cuts Zam Wessel's hand off. 3 of Lucas's children make cameos in the film. 3 of George Lucas's kids also pop up. Daughters Katie and Amanda played patrons at the Outlander Club, and his son Jet was a Jedi Padawan in the aforementioned archives. Attack of the Clones was the final Star Wars film released on VHS in the United States. At the time, in 2002, VHS was waning and DVD was rising, and that meant Attack of the Clones was the final of the Star Wars movies to get to the VHS format. The clones resemble Mandalorians. The clone helmets with their T-visor are inspired by the helmets of the Mandalorians, as seen with Boba Fett. Ki-Adi-Mundi's multicolored lightsaber. In the movie, Mundi's lightsaber changed colors during the fight at the Petroneki Arena on Geonosis. He began with a blue, and it is that color as well on the gunship, but in between, 65, a practical set for the Outlander Club. CGI was not always the go-to for Attack of the Clones. In the extended Outlander Club scene on Coruscant, they opted for a practical set with dozens of extras. Blue screens were not prioritized here, making it Hayden Christensen's favorite scene to film. The first digital cinema camera. Lucas and Attack of the Clones broke new ground by using the first digital cinema camera for filming. For the second prequel, Lucasfilm partnered with Sony to develop cinema cameras that captured digital footage at 24 frames per second, to be aligned with traditional cameras. One of the benefits was that the cast and crew could immediately view the footage on plasma TVs on the set. Revenge of the Sith. I have a bad feeling about this. Every Star Wars movie has some variation of this line. In this movie, Obi-Wan says it when he and Anakin enter General Grievous's ship, barely squeezing past the closing door. A thing for swivel chairs. Chancellor Palpatine foreshadows his true identity in this scene, where he's handcuffed to a swiveling chair. It is very reminiscent of Episode 6. Duplicitous Dooku. There was originally dialogue during the Count Dooku lightsaber fight which revealed that when Anakin's mother was tortured and killed by Tusken Raiders, he had been the one to arrange it, which sends Anakin into a rage, which leads to him killing Dooku. CGI face. Christopher Lee was 83 years old at the time of filming, and he couldn't perform all of the nimble stunt work necessary for the lightsaber duel, and so they had a stunt double, which they put a CGI version of his face on. Millennium Falcon appearance. The Falcon makes a blink-and-you'll-miss-it cameo during the establishing shot of the Senate on Coruscant after Anakin and Obi-Wan rescue Palpatine. Mute Jar Jar. Jar Jar is a controversial character, and in this movie, he only speaks 2 words. He says, "Excuse me," when he bumps into a senator while entering the building behind Palpatine. Leia hair. Padme's hair in this scene is very reminiscent of the cinnamon roll hairstyle that Princess Leia wore in Episode 4. A perfectly aged Emperor. Ian McDiarmid first played Emperor Palpatine in Episode 6, and he was only 37 at the time. And thanks to this, he was the perfect age for Palpatine in the prequels. George Lucas makes a cameo. This alien is played by George Lucas. It's a Pantoran, Chairman Papanoida. In the scene, he's also speaking to his daughter, who is portraying a daughter of Chairman Papanoida. Wookiee fight. Lucas planned to feature the Wookiee planet in Episode 6, but that didn't happen. And in Episode 3, Lucas finally decided that let's have a Wookiee battle on Kashyyyk. The design of their homes in their Roshir trees were taken from the notorious Star Wars Holiday Special. Hello there. When Obi-Wan drops in on General Grievous, "Hello there." This is also Obi-Wan's first line in Episode 4, when he sees R2-D2 after saving Luke from Tusken Raiders. "Hello there." Death Star plans. During the scene where Palpatine is informed about Obi-Wan tracking down Grievous, you can see Palpatine studying the plans of the soon-to-be-built Death Star. So uncivilized. After killing Grievous with a blaster, Obi-Wan throws it away, muttering, "So uncivilized." This is a callback to Episode 4 when Obi-Wan describes the Jedi lightsaber as playline, elegant weapon for a more civilized age. Steven Spielberg assist. Legendary director Steven Spielberg assisted with directing the movie, most notably during the climactic lightsaber duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin. What's in a name? Utapau came from some of the earliest drafts of what was then called the Star Wars. Once floated as the planet that became Tatooine, the word stuck with Lucas, and years later, after another attempt for the planet that became Naboo, it finally made its on-screen debut as Revenge of the Sith's sinkhole planet. Scruffy looking. Early in development, a 10-year-old Han Solo was originally going to be shown living on Kashyyyk, eventually finding a transmitter droid that helps Yoda track Grievous to Utapau. It was scrapped because Lucas deemed this idea a little too on the nose. George Lucas started writing the film before Attack of the Clones had even been released. So before Attack of the Clones was even finished and released, he began working on the script for what would become Revenge of the Sith. Part of the plot came from a book. Novelizations of movies are common. They also often include details that are not in the movie. In the novelization of Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan mentions battling Anakin, and Anakin falling into a molten pit. This became the basis for the culmination of Revenge of the Sith. Lucas completely revamped his idea for the opening of the movie. Attack of the Clones ends with the beginning of the Clone Wars, and originally, Lucas was thinking he'd start Revenge of the Sith with 7 battles on 7 planets. However, he realized that he really needed to focus on Anakin Skywalker turning to the dark side, so he became the focal point of the opening of the film. Lucas cut a lot of ideas from the film. There were a lot of changes Lucas made while shaping his script for the movie. For example, Lucas had meant to explain how Kamino had been erased from the Jedi archives. There were 2 other huge things that were considered but scrapped. One was a conversation between Yoda and the ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. The other was an even bolder idea, where the 10-year-old Han Solo on Kashyyyk idea. The movie got a fake title. Online speculation ran rampant about what the title of the film would be. One day, the title, The Creeping Fear, appeared on the movie's official website. Of course, that was just an April Fool's joke. One of the titles that was being speculated on was indeed Revenge of the Sith, which Lucas would confirm. He had originally planned the title for Return of the Jedi to be Revenge of the Jedi. General Grievous was not played by an actor. A lot of people would have loved to have been in Star Wars. Just look at all the cameos that have occurred in the franchise over the years. They could have gotten somebody impressive to voice the droid General Grievous. But that wasn't the case. Instead, sound engineer Matthew Wood voiced him. Temuera Morrison's character has a throwback name. Morrison played Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones, and he plays all the clones in Revenge of the Sith. That includes playing Commander Cody. That's a fitting name given Lucas being heavily influenced by the film serials he watched growing up. Commander Cody is one of those serials. OG Boba Fett returned in a new role. Jeremy Bulloch, who portrayed Boba Fett in the original trilogy, came back in Revenge of the Sith, and he portrayed Captain Colton, the pilot of Tantive 4. Technology helped the Wookiees. You can see quite a few Wookiees in the film, but they didn't require that many extras. Instead, they hired 10 actors and put them in Wookiee suits. Then, they were duplicated by computer to make it look like there were more Wookiees. Darth Sidious did something out of character. This movie marks the first time that we see Darth Sidious wield a lightsaber. We had seen him use force powers quite a bit in previous movies, but this is the first time he used a lightsaber. A real volcanic eruption was used for the movie. It just so happened that at the time of filming, Mount Etna in Italy was erupting. So they used that and filmed it for various scenes in Mustafar. Hayden Christensen talked his way into playing Darth Vader. Lucas had intended to hire a tall actor to play Vader in Revenge of the Sith, but Christensen pleaded with him to have him do it, and Lucas agreed. Though Christensen is far from short at 6 foot, he still had to wear lifts and look through a mouthpiece of the suit to play Darth Vader. It made some Star Wars history. The first 5 Star Wars films were all rated PG. Revenge of the Sith, though, involved Anakin getting burnt by lava. This is what you might call sci-fi violence, or an intense image. And that's the reason why the movie is rated PG-13. It made a ton of money. Revenge of the Sith got the best rating of any of the prequels. It even has an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. On top of that, it brought in plenty of money. The film broke a few box office records, including highest opening day gross and highest single day gross. It would eventually make $849 million worldwide. Your vote matters. Before the film's release, members of Hyperspace, which was the Star Wars fan club at the time, voted on the color of Ewan McGregor's droid, R4-G9, who replaced R4-P17. The bronze R4 eventually appeared as part of Hasbro's Revenge of the Sith sneak preview action figure line. Kenobi Carrier. A full-size Ewan McGregor dummy was faithfully fabricated for Hayden Christensen to better carry around on set during the Invisible Hand sequence by the throat. Ian McDiarmid actually had laryngitis on the day he was to film his now iconic speech about Darth Plagueis. Although he was in the process of losing his voice, it ended up gaining a rather interesting gravelly quality that punctuated the scene. Alright, that is 99 things you probably didn't know about the Star Wars Prequel Trilogy. Let me know in the comments below how many of these you actually didn't know, And feel free to share any other facts about The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith that you feel like. Let me know if you would like to see this kind of video for the original trilogy down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and until next time, thanks for watching.